Folks, welcome back to another episode of the Blockbuster Brothers. Today, we're not talking blockbuster movies. We're talking about blockbuster or hopeful blockbuster TV shows, specifically on Apple TV. Today, we're going to be talking about The Last Frontier and Pluribus. Brian, any initial thoughts right off the bat?
Well, Pluribus, for those who don't know, and I'm pretty sure that everyone does know this because it kind of seems like it's the main pushing point for what the show is about. It is that these are the creators of Breaking Bad, which is arguably one of the best TV shows that has ever been made. Uh, and you know what? That is going to be tough to top no matter what they do. I think that they set the bar so high with Breaking Bad that if you have the expectations of this is going to be another Breaking Bad, I think you're only going to set yourself up for disappointing. Not saying that this isn't bad. It's a little bit more heady with a little bit. It feels very intellectual, and the concepts that they're talking about are very highbrow. So for me, the first time I turned it on, I was like, I'm not ready for this because I was like, all right, you got to really lock in. Um, Before I give my opinions, Apple's usually is spending around, like 20 million, I think, per show is typically like how much the seasons go for. So, Apple TV usually does it better. They're still delivering on a much better level than their movies. I thought, the Lost Bus with Matthew McConaughey was heading in the right direction. But once again, I think people are really gonna like this series, even though I have certain gripes with it. But Steven, let's hear what you think.
Well, yeah, let's get into the gripes. I'm for that, but beforehand, like Brian said, Vince Gilligan, the creator of Breaking Bad. So, you know, you can't be any more hot than coming off of that show. So I was surprised, but not too surprised. They're spending 15 mil an episode for this show.
Wow.
Um, and just for the log line, in case anybody hasn't seen it or haven't heard about it, in a world overtaken by a mysterious wave of forced happiness, Carol Sturka, the only person immune, must uncover what's really going on and save humanity from its own bliss. So, kind of like Brian brought up, it's a little heady. Even that log line you can read or hear and go, okay, well, I kind of get it, but I don't really understand what's going on. Um, and I think that's what this show leans into. I almost got a little bit like Lost vibes where I'm like, oh, you're not supposed to be understanding these things solidly initially. And they just kind of stacked little clues on top of each other.
One thing I will say is that I do think that they are missing some star cast. Not that I don't think that you need a star necessarily. I think it is missing some strong performance. At least from my point of view, having somebody like Bryan Cranston really does a lot for a story. And right off the bat, I just with the scientists or the computer engineers. I just wasn't getting the same level of cinematography and performance that you're getting out of Breaking Bad. But we're really early. I think a lot of people are going to like this. I think that even despite what I think of it, not necessarily maybe it's a little too smart for me. Um, but I think a lot of people are going to like this. I think this is another win, and that kind of brings us to our next show on Apple TV, the Last Frontier, which I think is another really solid show. Apple TV is making really high quality. I know, and I saw that it turns out that Apple Tim Cook, or they reported that Apple TV, or Apple the app, whatever, loses about $1 billion a year, which is kind of crazy. And they said they're fine with that because they make so much money everywhere else. But again, I think that I don't know what's going on with the disconnect, and I think we're seeing with the Lost Bus and the Last Frontiers. You get these really high quality actors. I think it does guarantee a certain level, especially when you meet it with the story on par with their caliber of talent. it kind of gets back to where in an era of film where you just expect a certain quality, and that's what we're starting to get with Apple TV. They deliver. And I think that this is another fun watch, a little bit more gritty into the crime. Stephen, do you have a little plot analysis for The Last Frontier that you want to take through anybody who hasn't checked it out?
So, The Last Frontier follows Frank Remnick, a U.S. Marshal in charge of the quiet and weathered barrens of Alaska, as he needs to deal with a prison transport plane crash full of violent inmates inside his jurisdiction. So, right away, that's a pretty intriguing plot point. Like, you're
Pretty
like,
much
oh,
Con Air out in the wilderness.
sure. Con Air, that I literally, that's funny you brought that up. I saw someone comment on that, um, calling it a ripoff of Con Air. But
Everything's a derivative,
yeah,
everything's an inspiration of everything. That is art. That is art, whether you see it or you don't.
yeah, agreed. And it's got its own unique thing to it. So I kind of didn't pay that too much mind. But the show was shot mostly around Montreal, even though it's based in Fairbanks, Alaska. And they did spend 1 month shooting in a very remote region north of Quebec City. So that was kind of cool just for, verisimilitude, all that kind of stuff. Jason Clark, like Brian said, he's great. And I
Yeah.
really like the wife, Simone Kessel. Even in like the opening scene with them at home, I was like, man, I'm just getting so much from her.
She was
Yeah,
great in the Yellow Jackets.
very
So
cool. Cool.
you start to see it's cool when you see somebody on these shows is a little bit. One of my favorite things about Hollywood or the movie industry is seeing somebody, and we'll talk more about this. Please check out an episode that we're going to be releasing alongside this one about new releases of other actors. I think it's Jesse. He's redhead. He's actually from Breaking Bad. But just seeing the transition of an actor move from a supporting role and head closer and closer to lead talent. And there's certain actors that you see and you're like, wow, they've got the juice. I believe them. Ironically, the better the actor, the less you feel like they're acting. And that's not ironic, but I think it's very easy, and you see a lot of top tier actors. You feel like they're giving a performance. I do like Glenn Powell, but you kind of feel like there's some actors where you're like, oh, they're acting, and then you kind of have people, with Simone, who plays the wife. I believe her name is, yeah, Simone Kessel, and you just buy it. You just buy it. It's all about suspension of disbelief, and I believe everything that she does, and I think also these actors, when you get them bouncing off each other too, I think that's a special moment, and I think she's someone to watch for sure, and she's going to get bigger and bigger roles.
Yeah, agreed. And the creators of this show were behind The Blacklist, that show that did very, very well.
Mm,
So I'm not.
okay.
I liked this show a lot. Actually, I thought they made bold decisions. I thought it was it's got a tone and a blend of being very raw, a little bit funny, while also violent. There's the sense of danger while also allowing the tone to feel playful, like when these pieces of the plane are falling out of the sky, they're playing 50s music, which is kind of like
Yeah.
this serenading, kind of very interesting.
It's a
um
juxtaposition. It's yeah, going back to I find it hard to believe that if anybody's watching and has, I mean, that is Stanley Kubrick really the first person to do that with 2001: Space Odyssey, of having kind of the juxtaposition of music to what you're seeing and kind of the conflict. I think that's kind of credited with the first moment of the orchestra in the space, but you see it all over the place. I see James Gunn really do that as well, but I like it. I think that it gives it an artistic flair to a type of show that you don't typically always see that type of of stuff with. So again, a good quality coming out of Apple TV. Those are two shows that we recommend checking it out. At least getting an opinion for yourself.
And to jump, well, first, just last note on the Last Frontier. Anytime a movie can or TV show, whatever movie can captivate you without dialogue for the first few minutes and
Yeah.
keep you engaged, it's a win. And
Yeah.
so the Last Frontier did that right away. I was like, this is well done. I'm for it, and I suggest it. But I also, coming back to Pluribus, I'll say this: I thought I was kind of a little bit on the opposite side of Brian in that I liked the fact that there was no star power. Now, were some of the performances and the show is a little bit kind of tough to adjust to at first, but I was really, really impressed with it. And to be honest, I thought the pacing was so good that I didn't think a nanosecond was wasted. Like I was watching the show and I was like, yeah, it's weird. Yeah, I'm confused, but I actually really like the composition. And even though it feels strange, I think it's going to do very well. So I don't know. I mean, I think regardless how much of we individually liked both, we both agree that these are high quality shows with obviously some artists behind it.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate, I don't really care about stars. I don't care if I recognize somebody or not. That's not the type of
No,
watcher
sure.
I am. I think it just like feels like, they're. I do like that they're getting fresh actors, but it does feel very fresh and. Yeah, you know what? I need to watch more before I can give a final, but I completely agree. I think people are going to really like this. The way they cut, these are the same people that have, made Vince knows how to kind of get your curiosity and how to cut things and cut dialogue to, it always feels heavily artistic. So I will always support seeing them in there. I like their stance on, kind of like the no AI with a technical thing, seeing artists that are standing up for other artists. So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother video. We appreciate you all watching as usual, and we'll catch you all in another episode of the Blockbuster Brothers.